concern here on individuals who have cars that weren't damaged in the fire, trying to get to those cars in the garage. So that's where we are right now. And we hope to know a little bit better within the hour when we're back in index and can reopen the airport for incoming and outgoing flights.
I would imagine
But
there are a lot of.
We strongly suggest that individuals who had scheduled flights or are picking up people to check with the airlines.
I would imagine there are also a lot of people who have questions right now, who may have parked in that garage and may not even be in Jacksonville at the airport right now. Or maybe they're on their way back. Maybe they're trying to get back. Maybe whatever the situation may be. How do you recommend they get more information or stay up to date on what's happening so that they know whether they can get their car or what the situation is?
Well, we're going to push as much information out on social media as we can, but the specifics on it depends obviously on where your car was in the hourly garage, because it's a garage that was approximately 90+% full, and it was well over 1,200 spaces in that garage. So we're just going to have to push that information out. We have a website that people can get on to shoot questions to us, but we can't answer specific questions as to cars and their location and if they were impacted at this point.
What was it? I saw a tweet earlier from the airport. It seems like it's been a busy day at the airport. Can you just talk to me about the kind of operations out there today before this? It seems like I know you were talking about the tweet 4 hours ago talking about the parking situation, and it seemed like multiple garages were full. So it seems like it's a busy Friday at Jacksonville Airport when this happened.
Yes, we have obviously a busy week, and coming up on even a busier week with the Memorial Day holiday next weekend. And so there was a lot of activity at the airport coming and going today.
We are looking at this video. You can see just the size of this fire. Obviously, it's, I know you said there's still work to be done to figure out how much damage to this garage, but no reports of injuries or anything like that at this point.
At this point, we don't have any reports of anybody going to the hospital or other injuries. We were concerned, obviously, about smoke inhalation with anybody who might have been in the garage or downstream from the smoke, but we have not heard of anything at this point.
So what is the bottom line here, Michael, and what you want people to know? Obviously, still some questions, still a developing situation, but with the fire out, what do you want people to know?
Well, primarily safety and security is paramount. We want people to stay away from the garage. Obviously, follow the instructions of the sheriff's office here in and around the airport, and we will push more information out as to when we hope to have the airport operational again.
Right, and still no. I believe you mentioned this earlier, but no timeline at this point for that.
Yes, right now we do not want to put out a timeline. We are working as fast as we can to get this back up, and we will have it back up today. We just are not specific as to when.
All right, Michael Stewart, VP of External Affairs for the Jacksonville Aviation Authority. I appreciate your time. Appreciate you joining us this afternoon and giving us the latest information on what you know. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And again, just to give you another live look here at Jacksonville, you can see no longer smoke coming from that parking garage. As Michael was just telling us, his understanding is that the fire department has been able to thankfully put out that fire. So we're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Friday afternoon live on Fox Local and on YouTube. It is time now for our Tampa Connection, and for that we go to Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay. And Nancy, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Garrett. Today we're going to start in Polk County, where this morning Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd held one of his famous news conferences about the arrest of 255 suspects, including a former Tampa Bay Buccaneer player, who were arrested during a multi-day operation called Operation Fool Around and Find Out. Now, this operation focused on human trafficking, child predators, and illegal immigration. Sheriff Grady Judd said this was the first operation with the Polk County Sheriff's Office that had ICE embedded into it. Now, during this morning's press conference, Judd said that suspects came from all walks of life, including a doctor, nurses, as I mentioned, a retired NFL player who once played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, an executive with the American Red Cross, and 36 illegal immigrants. The sheriff also noted that 22 of the suspects were receiving government assistance. He said that the suspects' prior criminal histories included a combined total of more than 400 felonies and more than 500 misdemeanors. One suspect even served 26 years in state prison for a double murder. Judd said that one of the suspects used to play in the NFL and was a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. He said that the retired football player, Adarius Taylor, even brought a 6-year-old child with him and left that child, who does have medical needs, in a car. Judd said that the child's mother was called immediately and she came to pick up the child. So Taylor was also charged with child neglect for his part in this operation. Now, Judd said one of the suspects actually asked law enforcement officers if he could do his service hours with the Polk County Sheriff's Office. And he said another suspect who works over at the St. Petersburg Clearwater Airport just cried a lot and actually wet his pants when he was arrested. Now, Judd said that 4 possible human trafficking victims were rescued as a result of this operation, and he noted that even if just one person was saved, that made the whole operation worth it. Now, Grady Judd did have a lot of his famous Gradyisms during today's press conference, and we'll have much more coming up later on Florida Live. Garrett?
I remember remarking at one point during that the sheriff was in rare form today. It seemed like he had a lot of interesting things to say.
Yes, he did have a lot of interesting things to say, and some of them may actually be a little inappropriate for today's conversation, but he was definitely in rare form today at this press conference. And he even mentioned a mother and daughter who got arrested, and he said that the mother thought she was taking her daughter over to Polk County to buy drugs instead of meeting someone she was going to be engaged in prostitution, according to the sheriff. And he said that this woman thought it was okay to take her daughter across the county lines. She was from Orange County to purchase drugs. So both of them ended up in jail.
Yeah, 200 plus arrests in this. So a big operation, a lot went into that, and a lot of material for the sheriff to work with, but a lot of serious charges, in this as well. Story number 2, Nancy, and that is an update on some beach bacteria in Pinellas.
Yes, that's right. The Florida Department of Health has lifted its advisory for 3 Pinellas County beaches that had previously shown high levels of bacteria in the water. Yesterday, the Florida Department of Health actually issued that advisory for Clearwater Beach, Sand Key, and Indian Rocks Beach, and warned people against swimming in the water due to potential health risks. Health officials said water samples showed elevated levels of bacteria, which indicated fecal pollution may have somehow come from storm water and gotten into the Gulf. The stormwater runoff may have actually gotten into the Gulf water. Pets and wildlife, and as well as human sewage, may also have been in that water, which is why they issued that advisory warning people not to go swimming. Now, this morning, the health department said that the latest water samples taken from each beach actually showed acceptable levels of bacteria under state guidelines. Now, to see the latest test results from beaches across the state, visit fox13news.com. We do have a link on our website. Now, even though those levels seem to have gone down, it's up to beachgoers whether or not they want to go swimming this weekend. Garrett?
It's interesting that it was kind of lifted so quickly. It seems like you said it went into effect yesterday and then already lifted.
Yeah, it was really surprising. It wasn't even, I want to say it wasn't even 24 hours between the time that the advisory went out and to the time it was lifted. So again, it is up to beachgoers whether or not they want to go into that water, and you can see the latest samples and all the levels on fox13news.com.
All right, and story number 3 in our Tampa connection about a cat on the run in Lakeland.
Yes, this has been one of our top stories since it was posted. A cat named George was at the SPCA in Lakeland. He was there to get neutered, but he actually escaped the vet and found his way back home 3 miles away. Now, after his surgery, the staff said he broke out of his cage, scaled a fence, and that's when George the cat vanished. The staff said that they tried to catch George. They were even hoisting each other up over fences to try to catch this cat. Now, at the time, staff said that George was he still had anesthesia drugs in his system, which makes his escape even more surprising. Now, several days later, that cat, George, actually showed up at his house 3 miles away. He had to go through several subdivisions, around a couple of lakes, and even cross 5 or 6 roads. Now, a certified cat behaviorist told us that he thinks that it was a combination of scent, visual markers, and geomagnetism that helped George find his way back home. But he added that it may have simply been love. He said, contrary to popular belief, cats are very attached to us and they will find their way back home. George's owner said that he was distraught and heartbroken that George had gone missing. He said George needed a human touch, and that's exactly what he got when he returned home. His owner did joke, though, that he probably would have taken an Uber back home. However, he was very, very happy to be reunited with his cat. Garrett?
That's quite a journey. For a small cat like that, 3 miles away, my goodness.
Yes, yeah, he traveled 3 miles. Again, he traveled through a bunch of different neighborhoods, across roads, and around lakes, and he made his way back home. Again, there could be several different theories as to how he was able to find his way back home, but I'm going to go with the cat behavior specialist who said it was probably simply love. He was probably missing his owner. He was out of it after having surgery. He was still on anesthesia drugs, but he definitely loved his owner and made his way back home, which is very, very surprising.
Very motivated as well. Probably wanted to try to get out of there before he had that surgery.
Yes, I'm sure he probably did want to get out before the surgery, which makes it even more surprising because afterwards, I know I've had pets, not cats, but I've had dogs who've undergone surgery, and when they wake up, they are kind of dazed and out of it.
Yeah.
But this cat, he was ready to escape, and he made his way out and found his way back home.
He was just waiting for his moment, and he finally had it. That was his chance.
Yes.
But just glad everything
Yes.
ended up okay. He ended up home and safe and everything like that. Well, Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon for our Tampa Connection.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Friday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. Yesterday, the U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments about the birthright citizenship case. This stems from a challenge to an executive order that President Trump signed early in his term, his first day in office, actually, where he signed an executive order saying that children of parents who enter the U.S. illegally or on a temporary visa are not entitled to citizenship automatically. Joining us live now via Zoom to break down this case and also some of the arguments in it is Eric Merriam, an associate professor at the University of Central Florida. And Professor Merriam, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Happy to join you and your viewers, Garrett.
Professor Merriam, this is an interesting case because there were, really a couple of things kind of at play here, not just the legality of that executive order, but also the question of whether a federal judge for a single district can block policy across the entire country.
Exactly right. In this case, as in every case, there are both procedural issues, questions, and procedure, what we're talking about in the laws, the rules of the game, and then also the substantive issues, which are what in the Supreme Court world they call the merits case. Yesterday's oral argument was all about the procedural question, so not at all addressing the issue of whether or not the executive order is or is not constitutional. It was all about whether or not, as you indicated, district court judges, that's the lowest level federal court judge, whether a district court judge in a single piece of litigation, so one person sues, in this case, there were several lawsuits from around the country, they sue challenging the Trump executive order that you explained, and in those cases, as you mentioned quite correctly, on his first day in office, President Trump signed this executive order, said it would take effect 30 days later, but before that 30 days ran, multiple federal judges, district court judges, said, we think this is going to be unconstitutional, issuing an injunction against enforcing this order nationwide. And that's the really interesting thing in this case, is whether or not a federal district judge has power that goes way beyond their individual case or even their individual district, but all the way to say, no, government, you can't enforce this anywhere in the country, even though I might be a judge here in the District of Washington, which was the first case in which this happened.
And when it comes to these oral arguments, we always look for these kind of clues from the questions that these justices will ask of the attorneys. Did anything stand out as far as where, how the court might be leaning one way or another?
A few things, yes. One of for the central question of whether or not federal district judges ought to have this authority, this has been a long simmering question that unusually the Supreme Court has not answered for a couple decades. It's a bipartisan issue. This has been something that has happened both during Democratic presidencies and Republican presidencies, where some new executive order, some new federal government policy coming out of a presidential administration is challenged and a federal judge issues a nationwide injunction. We didn't really see those at all up until maybe the 1950s into the 1960s. In the last couple administrations, they've become very common. And so a lot of us have been waiting to see, well, this is an unsettled question of law about whether a federal district judge ought to be able to do this. And during yesterday's oral argument, the Supreme Court justices seemed to be in various places. There's really kind of a spectrum of answers possible here. One is we'll just let the federal judges continue to do what they've been doing. There wasn't a whole lot of appetite for that from the justices, maybe a couple. On the other end of the spectrum, it's we're never going to let federal district court judges ever issue nationwide injunctions. They can only issue injunctions in the specific cases before them. And if you want to, we can talk about some of the practical impacts of that in a case like this. And then there's kind of a middle ground where some of the justices seem somewhat interested in potentially in a case like this that might involve thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, to have some kind of class action where a federal district judge is assigned to handle the case, but not able to issue nationwide injunctions beyond the people who are actually participating in the case. So kind of a middle ground there. We saw support for those ideas from multiple justices. So where the court ultimately lands on the procedural question is tough to predict right now. I think that was the biggest takeaway. I'm not really sure what's going to happen. We do expect to get a decision by the end of June, maybe early July at the latest, on this question, but it could go any number of ways, honestly.
I do want to go a little bit further down that path when it comes to the impact of of if these decisions apply only to the individuals or groups involved in these specific cases, which would be a departure. What sort of impact would that have? Because that really would have kind of far-reaching ripple effects.
Absolutely. And the Trump administration, through the Solicitor General of the United States, was arguing yesterday for that kind of that end of the spectrum. You can only issue opinions regarding the specific litigants in front of you. And when you think about the practical impact of that, what that means is if you want citizenship for your child and under the executive order, they're not entitled to citizenship, you file a lawsuit and the judge can say, okay, I think this executive order is unconstitutional, so I'm going to prevent the government from enforcing it, meaning government, you have to allow this person to be a citizen. That's that one person winning their one case temporarily with an injunction. That doesn't apply to all the others. And also arguing yesterday was an attorney general for the state of New Jersey, where one of the other cases that were combined here, arguing, what do we do in the interim? If it's not okay for district judges to issue nationwide injunctions, we're in a situation where maybe a district judge in New Jersey says it's unconstitutional and therefore anyone born here gets citizenship, even despite the executive order. But what do we do if somebody comes from Florida, where there isn't a district court opinion enjoining the government from enforcing the executive order in Florida? Is that person a citizen or is that person not a citizen when they move to New Jersey? It really leaves a lot of difficulty with people having different rights under the U.S. Constitution, seemingly based on where they happen to be born, where they happen to give birth to their children. And so that's the practical impact that the Attorney General from New Jersey was arguing. We can't have this different answers in 50 different places. And that's one of the reasons to argue for district court judges being able to issue opinions that would be nationwide. Another thing, if I can, just real quickly, there was no indication from the justices of any support. This doesn't necessarily mean this is the way it's going to go, but there was no indication during the argument of any support for the executive order itself on the merits, on the substance of the case, meaning most legal scholars, most judges, every judge who's actually issued an opinion on this so far has said that the executive order is unconstitutional, violates the 14th Amendment. Even the court's more conservative justices, who typically are more supportive of the Trump administration's policies, in this particular case, didn't say anything during oral argument yesterday to suggest they thought that ultimately the order was constitutional. That's not to say they won't down the road, but they didn't take the opportunity to do that in any of their questions yesterday.
Do we think a decision will address both of those aspects, these procedural ones and the question of whether that executive order is constitutional?
Great question. The court's more liberal justices seemed to be suggesting in their questions that they thought that was appropriate. In other words, it was kind of everybody knows this is unconstitutional. I'm paraphrasing wildly here. Everybody knows this is unconstitutional. And so why don't we just answer that question too at the same time? I did not hear support for that from enough justices. So I actually think, and in fact, Chief Justice Roberts, importantly, said, in other cases, we've been able to fast track these, get to the answers really quickly. So we don't need to answer both this procedural question and the constitutional question at the same time. We can get to that, the constitutional question in due course, and we can do that quickly. He actually referred to the TikTok case, which we talked about a few months ago as an example of a case in which the Supreme Court can decide the substantive issue really quickly. So I actually do not think, based on their questions yesterday and the kind of the indications they gave us, that they will be deciding the constitutional question by the end of this term, by the end of June, beginning of July. I think they will decide the procedural question of what the power of a district court judges are, but I don't think we're going to see an answer on the fundamental question that we all want to know the answer to, which is whether or not the executive order violates the 14th Amendment.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of times in cases like this, they don't answer those questions unless they really have to.
You're absolutely right, and we've talked about that before. The idea is the theory of constitutional avoidance. The Supreme Court, even though we think of them as, that's who decides these constitutional questions, they themselves often try to stay away from answering constitutional questions if they can. I don't see that as a possibility down the road here. I think the executive order clearly raises the constitutional question, and I think within the next 12 months, the Supreme Court's going to have to answer it. The Trump administration, through the Solicitor General, was advocating for not answering that question, letting things go as long as possible. But I think a year from now, if we talk about it, I think the Supreme Court will have answered the question on the constitutional case.
All right, Eric Merriam, Associate Professor of Law at UCF. We appreciate you joining us. Always love talking with you. You have a great perspective for us, so we appreciate you joining us here on Florida Live.
My pleasure.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Friday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. An Orlando-based hospitality company says it paid out a $1 million bonus that was supposed to be for the CEO to scammers. That's according to some federal court documents first reported on by FloridaPolitics.com. And according to those documents, that company was the victim of what's called a business email compromise, where the scammer hacked into the CEO's email, ended up sending an email that appeared to be from the CEO, asking for the bonus to be sent to a new bank account and giving that bank account information for it to be wired. And it was only after a second email was sent asking for more money that officials realized what had happened. So how does this happen? And what are the takeaways, even if we're not a CEO expecting a $1 million bonus check in our bank account? Those are the questions I asked Matt Rose, the CXO for TechRage IT, earlier today on Fox 35 News Plus.
Unfortunately, these are all too common. The attempts are made all day long, and everybody should expect that they've happened to them or will keep happening to them, no matter, like you said, whether you're a CEO with $1 million bonus or just a regular Joe.
One of the things that stuck out to me from the court documents is that it says the company's IT had blocked several attempts before of someone trying to get into the CEO's email account, but it only took one. One attempt was successful, and then they got in and were able to get this $1 million.
Yeah, there's kind of a common saying in the security world that the attackers only have to be right once. We have to be right every time. And so it only does take that one time. I mean, if you would look at logs for CEOs of any level company, let alone, the company of this size, you're going to find that they're attacked all day long, constantly. And so it can be a lot of fatigue if you're looking through logs and whatnot. And it does just take that one, which can happen via various methods, unfortunately.
That's a good point you make about, it only takes them one time, but you have to be right all the time, when you're trying to protect from these things. So what kind of protections are in place or need to be in place to try to prevent something like this?
So it's kind of an interesting one. I mean, the first and foremost, everybody should have multi-factor authentication. We've talked about that before, and that's a must. There's a statement from Microsoft that's a few years old now that says that, MFA will stop 99.9% of attacks. It's not entirely true. That they're talking about what's called a brute force attack, or something where someone's just guessing your password. And in that case, it's true. MFA will stop virtually all of them. This is not what happens with these kind of attacks. So MFA is the first and foremost. But unfortunately, with a lot of these attacks, they actually, even those logs talking about that they blocked from different locations, there's a lot of different things you can do, but there's actually a thing called a token. And it's very technically into, but it's kind of this large code that you get that when you successfully log in with your password and a MFA, you kind of get a token. That's what allows you to keep logging in, at least for so many minutes or an hour, whatever you can do. And they steal that. And you don't realize it's even happening half the time. It's, this fake DocuSign or a fake thing that signs you in. And really the only way to protect against that is to monitor and hope to shut it down as quickly as possible. There are various tools out there that do that for you, but you're sort of still behind the ball game. Instead of trying to prevent it, you sort of have to just see that something happened and shut the door as quickly as possible.
Is that the bottom line here? Is that there really is no 100% way to avoid something like this?
Yeah, there's not. It's a common thing that in the IT industry, I get frustrated, and it doesn't happen often, luckily, but you, as an IT person, you're never hack proof. You're never 100% protected. And if someone's telling you that, it's never possible. It's like saying your house can't ever be 100% protected for someone who really wants to get in. You have the best security system in the world. There's always a hole. It's why we watch movies where things happen. But there is no way to be 100% preventative. You have to respond as quickly as possible, and you have to have as much measures in place, not just those things like MFA, but it's also training. It's why companies have security awareness training and tell you what to look out for in emails, tell you to, even things like wiring money. The most common thing you can do is say that before you wire funds, especially to a new account, you pick up the phone and you call. And, now that's getting harder with AI. We've talked about that as well. But you need to have human level things you do, and you need to also have kind of tripwires on the back end that will help you figure out when things are happening too. But that you will not prevent it 100%.
It's getting kind of scarier and harder to prevent these things as well, because of those other kind of factors that you talked about, like AI and things like this. Is this only going to get harder to prevent it as things continue to advance?
Absolutely. I mean, and this type of attack, a business email compromise, this is essentially what phishing has turned into nowadays. It's low tech for the attackers. You can actually go and download the tools they use to try to attack you, and you can do it yourself in probably 20 minutes if you have any level of skill. It's just a matter of you're looking for someone to fall for it. So as more and more people use technology, as AI gets better, I mean, already in 2023, the FBI reported almost $3 billion in losses from business email compromise, and it was the highest number of reported cases that got into them. That number will only get higher because this attack is just easy for them to do. And the numbers keep changing, but like Microsoft typically publishes, I think it's between 30 and 40% of all their business accounts have MFA. 30 to 40%. Like that tells you that even without the MFA piece, we're still not even there yet. So we have a large gap that we need to educate and get people to do in order to prevent these things.
I also think it's kind of eye-opening to hear you say that there are scammers and hackers out there that are trying to get in all day long to these business email accounts, and that could include mine. That could include yours. I mean, that can include all of ours. And the steps that we take as employees, and what we need to watch out for red flags and things like that as well.
Well, and that's the thing you have to remember. This was a CEO of a successful company. Yes, they're going to target those people. They're going to target finance. They're going to target the CEOs. You as being a public figure, you're certainly going to be attacked for that reason. But also just they don't really care. They're looking at small businesses, large small businesses. They know they don't have the protections in place, but also they get access to your email list. They can then try to phish those people. It's a sales game. It's marketing. It's numbers too. So they kind of don't care. And just because you're a small business, just because you're whatever the low, what you consider a low position to be at your company, doesn't matter. It's still important.
Well, and looking for those soft targets, looking for those potentially easy ways in, and then, like you said, that may open doors to a number of other avenues for them.
Yep, pretty much.
We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. A quick update here. Give you a live look at Jacksonville at the parking garage at the airport. That's the hourly garage that you're looking at that we were showing you earlier was on fire. From the Jacksonville airport, tweeting just 5 minutes ago, the hourly garage is still closed, but the other parking facilities at the airport are now accessible. Airport shuttle buses will take folks to their vehicles there. They're saying the pickup location for those shuttles is on the lower level of baggage claim. So operations slowly getting back to normal at Jacksonville Airport after that fire. Again, still not a lot of information about what exactly happened, and that hourly garage still closed. That's going to likely be a little bit, as we talked with the VP from the airport, the VP of External Affairs at the beginning of the show, telling us that they're getting that checked out for structural damage. So certainly a process there. We'll continue to keep you updated here on Fox Local. Give you a live look now in Miami, where tonight the Citrus Series kicks off, 7:10 p.m. The Tampa Bay Rays and the Miami Marlins. And joining us live now to talk about this is Eli Sussman, who is the founder of Fish on First. And Eli, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
It's great to be on with you again, Garrett.
All right, Eli, so the Marlins, been a bit of a tough year for them so far, 16-26. They have lost their last 6 series in a row. What has been going wrong for them that hopefully they might be able to, in their perspective, might be able to fix in this series against the Rays?
It starts with their starting pitching, which through the years when they've been competitive, that has been their calling card, their strength. The rotation led by Sandy Alcantara, who not that long ago won a Cy Young Award, but he's kind of been the face of their struggles in that aspect so far this year. They don't eat innings, they don't throw strikes, and it's put a lot of pressure on their bullpen. It has had that ripple effect, where, as you pointed out, they've lost 6 consecutive series, where even when one thing goes right with their starter, it usually doesn't sustain. And maybe they are finally turning the corner in that respect. They just got Ryan Weathers back from the injured list. He was poised to have a big year based on spring training. And it's hard to believe that Alcantara will continue to struggle as much as he had to this point in the season. So that's been their biggest weakness so far. A lot of other aspects have actually been surprisingly decent. So once that turns around a little bit, they should be putting up a better fight than they have the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, we keep, I keep thinking Alcantara's going to turn it around. Alcantara's going to turn around. You have to think at some point he will. What has been the problem with him so far, though?
The biggest thing has just been his command not being anywhere close to what it used to be, where when he throws pitches over the plate, they are too much over the plate and leading to a lot of more damage than we're used to seeing. And then just in general, he's had these spells where he completely loses the zone and puts on too many free base runners. He's historically, and this has been an issue for the entire staff, a lot of trouble controlling the running game. The Marlins have allowed by far the most stolen bases in baseball this year, largely because their pitchers are too slow to the plate. So he's been one of them. That seems like something that should be coachable as the year goes on. Just having those guys be more cognizant of runners on base so that small things don't snowball into pretty big innings. I think he's slowly putting it together coming off Tommy John surgery. But yeah, at this moment, I think it's been somewhat of a worst case scenario with him, an ERA that is north of 8 when we're more than a quarter of the way through the season.
Now, you mentioned there have been some bright spots, though, including on the Marlins offense and some hitters who have been really tearing the cover off the ball.
Yeah, that starts with Kyle Stowers, and he was the one from the very beginning of the season, an opening day walk-off hit. He really has not slowed down all that much since then. He won National League Player of the Week earlier this month, based largely on a walk-off grand slam that he hit on their previous homestand. And he's just coming off entering the series. He's coming off another 2-home-run game. He's had 3 separate games with multiple home runs. Overall, he's on pace for 38 homers. The Marlins haven't had that many from any players since somebody named Giancarlo Stanton won National League MVP 8 years ago. That's been a revelation considering how much he struggled just last season when he came over to the Marlins originally. Yeah, other than that, Connor Norby is coming around, who was acquired in the same exact trade and got off to a slow start coming off a minor injury. But now he's a really productive third baseman for them as of late. And the catching situation has been a nice turnaround from recent years where Augustin Ramirez, in my opinion, he's one of the front runners for National League Rookie of the Year at this point. He has mashed since his very first day in the majors, which was just a few weeks ago. And now they are finding spots for him in the lineup basically every day, either as their catcher or their designated hitter. So Augustin Ramirez is definitely one that I'm focused on, only 23 years old, and he has hit the ground running as a big leaguer.
We talked about the Marlins' struggles, losing 6 series in a row. The Rays, on the other hand, they're 20-23 and are coming into this having won their last 2 series.
Yeah, the Rays have been a fascinating group. Overall, I think a more talented team than the Marlins are and a more experienced team. The difference between whether they're at home at George M. Steinbrenner Field playing at the Yankees spring training facility versus on the road has made a pretty big difference. They've been a good team on the road, a top 3 road winning percentage in baseball, whereas they're bottom 3 in win percentage when they play at home in Tampa so far this year. This iteration of the Citrus Series is in Miami, so maybe that is a fortunate for them, just considering that trends that they've had this year. And they've a breakout hitter of their own in Jonathan Aranda, who very similar to Kyle Stowers. It was unclear what his place in the big leagues would be entering the season. And now he is very firmly on track to be an all-star representative for them in the middle of their lineup. So these organizations kind of mirror each other in that way, having one guy who has taken a huge step forward this year, just as he's seemingly entering his prime years.
Overall, the Rays have had a lot of success against Miami going back the past few years when we're talking about these Citrus series.
Yeah, I was excited to talk about that. It's hard to fathom how lopsided it has been the last handful of years. They meet every single year, usually home and home, a series each. And overall, the Rays have won every single year, those head-to-head matchups over the last 6 years. Overall, 24-4 against the Marlins. That is an .857 winning percentage. Going back to 2019, they have swept the Citrus series in a couple of those years. That's one of those things where even if the Rays are the more talented team overall, you would never expect that kind of disparity between two groups. That history is just hard to ignore. The fact that every single year the Rays have convincingly won this head-to-head matchup between their in-state rivals.
Yeah, so we will see. It's still fun when you're playing those in-state teams. What are you going to be watching for tonight?
Well, tonight's the series opener. It's another Max Meyer starts, and he's somebody that at his best had one of the very best pitching performances in baseball this year. He had a 14 strikeout game last month in Miami. So the upside with him is always really exciting to see when he is on the mound for them. And yeah, with I guess just overall to see how exactly the Marlins get going offensively at home, because they're a team that has had pretty big splits where they have just recently on their past road trip, it's been a grind for them just to get 2 or 3 runs on the board versus when they're at home. They have certain setup around Lone Depot Park that they feel really prepares themselves well for games. They have special technology for simulating opposing pitchers that they feel gives them a real advantage. So this is a situation where, despite the history of the Rays getting the better of them head to head in recent years, maybe under these particular circumstances, they feel that they might have an advantage in this particular case.
All right, Eli Sussman, founder of Fish on First. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot.
We're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Friday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. Today, Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd announced more than 200 arrests in the Operation Fool Around and Find Out. We talked about the details of that earlier on with Nancy in our Tampa connection. It did result in the arrest of 255 suspects, and the sheriff's office says 36 of them, so 36 of those suspects, were in the country illegally. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd talked about the partnership with ICE and the arrests of undocumented immigrants in this bust.
I want to say some things that our colleagues, our federal colleagues, are not permitted to say because they work for bosses who work for bosses who work for bosses. I can't say enough good about ICE, the ERO, and the HSI guys and gals. They are hand in glove with us every day. They have a mission from the President of the United States. We also have another mission at the state level from Governor DeSantis, and that is to keep people safe. Now, I want to underscore one more time, 15% of the people that we arrested weren't even supposed to be in this country, but they were in this country committing crime. 26 of the 36 here were not documented at all, which means they didn't come across the border illegally and then check in, as we were led to believe they were doing. But 26 of the 36, they had no information on them at all, which means they snuck in the border and they're in the country. So we really don't know how many illegal immigrants are in this country. We know how many came in and checked in. Several of the comments that these illegal immigrants made is, yes, they're feeling the pressure, but they're not going anyplace. We asked them, hey, will you take the $1,000 and go home? And they go, of course not. No, we're not doing that. We're staying here. They're going to stay here until we make them leave. We heard stories of why they were crossing, as they were making their way to the border, that people dying at various crossings in Mexico and Central America. One told us that he made a $20,000 payment to a coyote to get him into the United States, and he walked for 5 days through the desert. Another said he paid $10,000. Now, he's been deported 3 times and he keeps coming back. Another paid $7,000 to come across. When we ask one, why do you keep coming back? He said, oh, I always keep coming back. I'm in construction. I can make $60,000 a year here under the table. And I can make, $6,000 in Mexico, $10,000 in Mexico. I'm always coming back. Even when y'all send me away, you're going to have to stop me again. Ladies and gentlemen, another reported that he came here illegally from Cuba and saw 2 people drown along the way. They shouldn't be here. They're committing crime. They're taking up resources of United States taxpayers. They're not coming here the right way. We open our arms to those immigrants that come here legally and appropriately. But the ones that come here and commit crime, that is 100% totally not acceptable. Now, I would ask if Ms. Peters, Rita Peters, from the statewide Office of the Attorney General would come. James Uthmeyer, our Attorney General, is always eager to send people and to help us with these operations. And Ms. Peters, as I said earlier, is just simply the best of the best when it comes to prosecutors.
That was Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd talking about the partnerships with ICE, arresting 36 suspects in that 255 that were arrested as part of that Pull Around and Find Out. I want to let you know, show you one more time these images from earlier today at the Jacksonville airport. Our understanding is that some things are back up and running. Again, I read that tweet a few minutes ago showing that the other parking facilities are back open. We are still seeing some impacts to flights in that area, so just check with your airline if you will be heading to Jacksonville, flying out. And again, stay tuned for more information about what's going to happen with the cars in that parking garage. Again, that was earlier. I can give you a live look now. Thankfully, that fire is out, but still a story that we are continuing to track the impacts of this afternoon. That's going to do it for us here on Florida Live this afternoon. We appreciate you joining us. Hope you have a great rest of your day and a great weekend. We'll see you Monday at 2 p.m. here on Fox Local.
Well, hello there. I'm Fox 13 meteorologist Nash Rhodes, and welcome to Sky Tower weather now. Thank God it's Friday, and temperatures have not given us any break as we head into the weekend. Highs this afternoon, even a little bit warmer in some spots than where we were yesterday. There's a very active weather pattern also taking shape in other parts of the country, not down here closer to Florida, but up to our north, especially as you start to get into spots like Tennessee, Kentucky, areas where a 4 out of 5 severe weather outlook is now in place, and we're expecting a very active evening for them with the chance for tornadoes, damaging straight line winds, and plenty of cloud to ground lightning. We'll cover that coming up, but I want to start with your local forecast first because I know everybody's wondering, when is this heat going to go away? Well, down the horizon, we do have chances for rain. We'll just have to wait, though, in the immediate forecast, as there's not going to be a lot to talk about in the immediate future. Let me show you what I'm talking about currently with our temperatures. We're in the upper 80s and low 90s. The hottest spot here on the map that we've seen today is Winter Haven and Sebring, each of them at 94 and 95 degrees there. Lake Placid at 94, and along the coastline, a little bit cooler in spots like Sarasota and Venice. Current temperatures up and down the state, very similar to what we're experiencing at the moment. Tampa at 88, Clearwater at 91, Crystal River at 88, and Brooksville at 91 degrees as well. Zooming out, here's the bigger picture. Big red coloring up and down the state gives you an idea of temperatures that are well above average even for this time of the year. Now, as we get closer and deeper into the summertime, I do think that we'll start to see more days like this, but at least in the short term, this is a little abnormal stretch of heat with winds not doing us any favors. In fact, winds are mainly coming in off of the Gulf. That is bringing more of that humid, deep, tropical, moisture-ridden air right over our viewing area and continuing to bump up the dew points and the feels-like temperatures. For instance, look at the southeast United States. This is a dew point map behind the cold front that's draped over Texas, Oklahoma, up into Missouri. I'm going to highlight it here so you got a better idea of what I'm talking about. It extends from down here up and down through Kansas City with a warm front, bringing all this moisture farther to the north from here. Dew points are starting to climb into the mid-70s around these spots, and that's where it feels just very humid, mucky, sticky as you step outside.